The garage is quiet, and the world outside is finally starting to shut up a little. It's just you, the bike, a couple of stubborn bolts, and a name that's stamped on half the parts in your line of sight. Harley-Davidson. It's on the tank, on the air cleaner, on the t-shirt you wipe your hands on. It's on jackets, dealer stickers, tattoos, coffee mugs, and half the bar talk at every rally from here to Sturgis. And somewhere along the way, that turned into a weird, basic question almost nobody actually asks out loud. Who is Harley-Davidson? Like, is that an actual guy? Did he live down the street? Did he ride? Did he die in some blaze of glory crash? Did he ever see a bike that looks like the one in your garage right now? Tonight on Haunted Throttle Night Shift, we're rolling back to the beginning and answering that once and for all. You're tuned in to Haunted Throttle, tune in while you tune up. Let's talk about the man behind the myth. And the three other guys the logo never really mentions. Here's the short answer most people never actually hear. There was never a dude named Harley-Davidson. The name on your tank is a mashup of two families, one kid named William S. Harley, and three brothers named Arthur, Walter, and William Davidson. Four young guys. One city. No money. Turn of the century. The kind of origin story that should be in a comic book, not a parts catalog. The year is the early 1900s. You're in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The roads are mostly dirt. Horses still outnumber cars. And bicycles are what kids tinker with in the shed. William Harley is that kid who doesn't stop at how do I ride this? He's asking, how do I bolt an engine to this and make it outrun everything else on the street? He's working as a draftsman, sketching out a tiny engine that could sit in a bicycle frame and actually move. Not a toy. Not a science experiment. A motor bicycle that could climb hills and stay together on bad roads. He's got brain power, but he doesn't have a shop, or the extra hands to turn drawings into steel. That's where the Davidsons come in. Arthur Davidson is the friend with hustle. He believes in the idea hard enough to start building it in a 10x15 wooden shed behind his family's house, the kind of place you'd look at today and think, that's barely big enough for my mower and my toolbox. Walter and William A. Davidson are the brothers who'll get dragged into this madness when it gets real. Together, the four of them build something that does not yet exist in any serious way in America. A machine that's not a bicycle, not quite a car, and way more fun than either. They bolt together that first motor bicycle. It's clunky. Underpowered. Kinda ugly. But it moves. And then they do the most important thing any garage rat can do. They build the next one better. The second design is stronger. Bigger engine. More power. It starts drawing attention. Hill climbs. Local races. Cops who want something faster than the horses they're riding now. Word spreads, there's a little shop in Milwaukee turning out serious motorbikes. In 1903, they formally hang out a sign, Harley-Davidson Motor Company. Four guys. One hyphenated name. Not Harley. Not Davidson. Harley-Davidson. A partnership. Now here's where the myth starts to grow. Most brands that survive 100 years become symbols. At some point, the story stops being about four dorky young mechanics in a shed and starts being about something bigger. Speed. Freedom. Noise. Rebellion. Harley-Davidson hit all of those. They built bikes for racing and started winning. They built bikes for police departments, so the first motor cops chasing bootleggers and speeders were on Harley-Davidsons. They built bikes for the US military in World War I and again in World War II, shipping machines overseas that soldiers would remember long after they came home. If you picture a black and white photo of a line of servicemen on rugged old bikes in muddy boots and goggles, odds are those tanks say Harley-Davidson on the side. But here's the weird twist. The bigger the legend got, the more the actual humans behind the name started to fade into the background. William Harley, chief engineer, quietly kept turning out new designs, obsessing over improvements and performance and reliability. He wasn't out there in a leather jacket doing smoky burnouts. He was the guy with the slide rule and the notebook. The brain behind the brawn. Arthur Davidson became the salesman, the guy who made sure dealers existed, customers were treated well, and the name meant something good when it showed up in a new town. He spent more time in a suit than in greasy overalls. Walter and William Davidson held down operations and quality. They made sure when somebody bought a Harley-Davidson, it actually worked, which is kind of important when your entire advertising pitch is this thing will get you where horses and cheap junk won't. They were company men, not rock stars. Meanwhile, the bikes started turning into rock stars. The V-twin thump. The long wheelbase. The way that orange and black bar and shield logo looked on a tank, on a race banner, on a cop's bike, on a returning vet's rigid frame. By the middle of the 20th century, Harley-Davidson wasn't a person. It was an identity. Fast forward to the post-war years. You've got veterans home from World War II and Korea who have seen too much, been told what to do for too long, and are not interested in living the perfect picket fence life. They've got mechanical skills from wrenching on military equipment. They've got a taste for danger. They've spent a lot of time in groups of guys who trust each other more than they trust outsiders. You bolt all that onto a heavyweight American motorcycle and you get something new. Clubs. Packs. Runs. Some of them are just guys who like to ride hard and drink hard. Some of them are trouble. The media calls them outlaws and splashes them across front pages when something goes wrong. And because Harley-Davidson was already connected to cops, soldiers, racers. And because their bikes were big, loud, and everywhere. They become the center of the story again. But this time, in black leather instead of a shed behind somebody's house. Now when somebody says Harley-Davidson, they don't picture William with his blueprints or Arthur with his sales ledger. They picture a bearded guy in a cut, boots on a peg, leaning into a curve on a long two-lane highway, not particularly interested in following anybody's rules. The company didn't create that image on purpose at first. In fact, for a while, they were uneasy about it, torn between selling to cops and selling to the guys cops were chasing. But you can't fully control what the culture does with your machines. You can only decide whether you're going to lean into it or run away from it. Harley-Davidson leaned. So back to your question, who is Harley-Davidson? Who is he? He's that kid in the early 1900s sketching engines on paper while the rest of the world is still adjusting to bicycles. He's the skinny salesman knocking on doors, asking shops to take a chance on a new kind of machine with a name nobody can pronounce yet. He's the quiet engineer who cares way more about piston rings and oiling systems than about being famous. He's the soldier coming home who buys a surplus bike because it feels like the only place he can breathe. He's the cop sitting high on a police special in mirrored sunglasses. He's the kid in 1975 staring at a neighbor's shovel head, deciding right then that whatever a normal life is supposed to be, that's not it. And in a weird way, he's you every time you pick a line through traffic or down a back road and think, I could have gotten a car. But I didn't. The name came from 4 specific men. The legend came from everybody who swung a leg over those bikes after them. The founders died decades ago. William S. Harley passed away in the 1940s. The Davidsons followed, one by one. Long before batwing fairings and screamin' eagle pipes and touchscreen infotainment systems, the original Harley and the original Davidsons took their last rides. But the brand kept going, through good times and near-death experiences. Through the rough years under AMF when quality slipped and the jokes started, through the 80s and 90s revival when the motor company became a lifestyle brand as much as a motorcycle manufacturer. Somewhere in there, the company turned from a family-run outfit into a corporation with shareholders, executives, and marketing departments. The guy who runs Harley-Davidson now sits in a boardroom, not a backyard shed. If you want to know who he is, on paper, that's a CEO with a last name that isn't Harley or Davidson. But that's not really what you were asking, is it? When you say who is Harley-Davidson, you're reaching for the ghost in the machine. You're asking, what kind of person am I riding with when I throw a leg over this thing? Here's my answer, standing in this imaginary garage with you. Harley-Davidson is not one man. It's a promise a handful of people made in 1903 in Milwaukee and then spent a century backing up with steel and gasoline. The promise goes something like this. If you're willing to trade comfort for feeling, and quiet for the sound of your own engine, we'll build you a machine that will take the worst roads you can find and still get you home. It won't be perfect. It won't be polite. But it'll be yours. And when you ride it, you won't feel like everyone else. You can argue about reliability. You can argue about performance. You can argue about prices, dealers, corporate decisions, every change in every model year. But that core promise? The idea that this thing in your garage is less of a vehicle and more of a personality you plug into. That's the ghost of William Harley and the Davidson brothers still hanging around. So, the next time somebody says, who is Harley-Davidson, anyway? You can smile and say, he was 4 guys in a shed at the turn of the century. And now he's anybody who's ever twisted the throttle and thought, yeah, this is the only way I want to get there. That's your night shift for tonight. Check your fluids, tighten what's rattling, and if you roll out before morning, ride like those 4 kids in Milwaukee are still watching what their name's doing out on the road. This is Haunted Throttle Night Shift. Ride safe. Sleep easy. If you can.